Welcome to another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I am the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. You can learn more about it at teachthegeek.com. Again, that is teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Luis Duque. He's a bridge engineer and host of the Engineer Our Future podcast. He immigrated to the U.S. to go to engineering school and must have liked it so much, he's still there. I'm interested to learn more about his transition to the U.S., his work as an engineer, and his journey in public speaking. Welcome to Teach the Geek interviews, Luis.
Thanks for inviting me, Neil. I'm very excited to be here today.
Wonderful. So from the bit of research I did on you, I saw that you got your undergraduate degree in civil engineering. Where did that interest in civil engineering come from?
I think it just started with my parents. My dad is an architect. My mom is like a systems engineer. So I've been like in the STEM field kind of early on in my career. And just having my dad kind of show me the construction sites, how construction works, bringing me to see the operations and everything. I think that's kind of where I was inclined towards like construction, architecture, kind of in that area. Obviously, when I was in school, I started to realize that I was inclined more into the physics and the math side of construction. So that's when I decided to become a civil engineer and a structural engineer after that. But it kind of all came down to just my dad's experience and showing me the path of like construction and architecture.
But you weren't done with just an undergraduate degree. You got a master's too. What was the motivation to get the master's?
I think for structural engineering specifically, it's really important to have a master's degree just because of the type of work we do and the complexities that come with building a bridge, a building, a house, something like that. And as an undergrad, you don't really see a lot of these classes that teach you the more advanced stuff. So especially if you want to be building large, high skyscrapers or bridges or something like that, you're almost required to have a master's degree.
Okay, got you. And I did mention in the intro that you immigrated to the U.S. to go to school. Was that always the plan to go to school in the U.S.?
Yes, that's been my plan since I was probably 12, 13 years old. The reason I came to U.S. in the first place was to play tennis. So I was looking for a university that allowed me to play sports and get my engineering degree. I ended up going to South Dakota just because it was both affordable. They had a decent tennis program, but most importantly, I think they had a recently good engineering school, which is kind of what I ended up wanting for. I knew I was not going to be a tennis player, so I wanted to go to a school that really taught me all the basics of engineering and just have a great education at the end of the day.
Oh, okay. How did you balance being an engineering student and playing tennis?
I would say it was definitely not easy. I only did it for a couple of years. So most of the classes were your basic physics, chemistry, just basic engineering classes. So it wasn't too difficult. I still had to obviously practice. We practice 2-3 hours a day. And on top of that, you have to go to class, do homework and all of that stuff. So I think it was more leaning on the discipline and finding the systems that help me really carve time to study, to do all the things. And obviously as a athlete, you learn that kind of really early on. I've been playing tennis since I was 8. So you know how to manage your time, be disciplined, work in teams, and just have a mindset of, okay, I am in tennis mode. I'm going to make the most out of this time. And after that, I just went to do my homework, do classes, and I was making the most of that time. So being organized and putting those buckets in the right place, I think was super important.
Right. I mean, and another thing I just thought about is the transition from where you're from to the U.S. I'm sure that, well, I shouldn't say I'm sure, I don't know, but leaving your I guess your comfort zone of where you're from and going to a new country. I mean, what was that transition like?
It was definitely challenging. I mean, the culture here, especially in South Dakota, is completely different to what I was used to. On top of that, you have like the weather differences, food differences. Everything is completely different. You enter a university where you're basically by yourself most of the time, studying or basically just living by yourself. I was grateful to have a support system like the tennis team. I made really good friends with everyone. There were guys from Brazil, from Colombia, from Argentina. So there was a lot of similar cultures within the tennis team that I think helped that transition be a little smoother, a little easier. But obviously, even as someone that lives in the US, going to university is a big change in their lives. So coming from a different country was even larger.
Oh, great. Well, actually, before we continue, what country did you come from?
Colombia.
Whoa, so you went from Colombia to South Dakota?
I did.
Holy crap. Man,
It's a big change.
yo, I mean, if you're gonna leave Colombia, I would have thought maybe you go somewhere like Miami or something. At least you see some Colombians there. But man, you went for
Right.
big
Yeah.
air.
And the thing was trying to find that engineering school, trying to find the tennis team. That's kind of where, and I was living in Canada at the time where I was looking for school. So finding those two and a place that was also affordable for me, because as an international student, I don't really get to have like student loans or like big scholarships or anything. I had to find a place where I could practice sport with a decent tennis team that I would be challenged and be part of it, as well as a good engineering school, and for it to be affordable. So there were too many different factors that kind of ultimately led me to South Dakota. I was looking at schools in Arizona, in Florida, in New York, in different areas, but they were a little bit too expensive. They didn't have enough budget for like tennis players. So I was kind of just dragged into going to South Dakota.
Gotcha. Did you say you were in Canada before that?
I did, just kind of playing tennis and trying to find universities at a tennis academy in
Okay.
Ontario.
Okay, got you. Wow, you can get around, man. That's wonderful. So I mean, I did say in the intro that you work as a bridge engineer. Obviously, when you get a degree in civil engineering, there are a number of paths you can go down. Is bridge engineering, was that always the plan? And if not, like what got you into bridge engineering?
I think the main plan has always been just like structural engineering in general. So that includes bridges, buildings, residential construction, commercial, kind of that area. I think that's kind of what I was most interested in. I did work in residential for a couple of years, and then I transitioned into bridges after that. I don't think it was like I want to 100% be in buildings or be in bridges. It's kind of where my career has taken me. The connection, the networking, that's how I ended up in bridges. I just have always just wanted to be in a company where I felt challenged. I felt like there were new problems every day. I felt supported with my volunteering, my work, and everything. And that's kind of how I ended up in the company I'm right now. More than just, I want to go to bridges. Let me apply to all the bridge companies in the area. I just use my network to basically get where in the company that I am right now.
Okay. One thing I just thought of when you were talking, Luis, and you went to school as an international student, and then when you're done, it's time to find a job. What was that like, being an international student trying to get a job as a bridge engineer, or just a job as an engineer in the US?
Yeah, it's challenging, and I've talked about this plenty kind of on my podcast and on social media, but I didn't really get my first like engineering, like structural engineering job until I graduated with my master's degree. So that's 6 years of school before I actually got my first like engineering job that I was like, this is what I want to be doing. I worked in a wastewater treatment plant. I worked cleaning bathrooms and fixing furniture at the university. I worked as a like project manager kind of type for like an electronics company. So I did like a lot of like random things in college just to get the experience. I knew that even if they were not completely structural engineering based, they were teaching me some of the skills that I needed to succeed in my career later on. So there's obviously a lot of permits that you need to apply for. There's different visas that you need to get. There's all these different challenges beyond just going to school and finding a job that international students have to figure out and have to go around to find a job. I think that's kind of the main challenges. One, finding the right company that will invest in you, that will support you through all of that. And two, just getting around all the permits and all the visas and everything that you have to apply for.
Man, you must have really wanted to stay if you had to go through, to have to jump through all these hoops, because the option could have been to go back to Colombia. But was that ever an option for you, or was it always to stay in the US?
I think it was always to stay in the US. I think I was grateful that I found, I got married right after school. So even right then, I still had my, what they call the OPT, just kind of the work permit. After you graduate from school, you have a couple, 2-3 years to work without really having to apply for a work visa. But during that time, I got my green card and ultimately citizenship to the US. So I was kind of lucky in that sense that I was able to just bypass most of like the work visa, all the other permits that you have to get when you're an international student, simply because I got married kind of after I graduated from school. But there's a lot of people that really want to stay in the US and sometimes can't find a company that will invest in them, and ultimately have to go back to their countries and find another way and try to come back later.
Yeah, I actually worked with a guy just like that. So we started at the company the same day, and eventually, well, I left eventually, and he stayed on. But then I guess he tried to get a job somewhere else. I guess something with his visa fell through, and he ended up having to go back to India, where he's originally from, and that's where he is now. Luckily, he was able to find a job in medical devices. I worked in medical devices. He's able to find one at a company there, and apparently he's been doing really well. So it's worked out for him. But I could totally see how it might be an issue, especially if you got your training in the U.S., you have job experience in the U.S., and then you're going back to a country where you have no connections. I mean, you're from there, but you have no professional connections there. You didn't go to school there. You have no network there. It must be it might be just as difficult to find a job there as it was in the country where you didn't have, where you had to leave.
Yeah, absolutely. And the harder thing is the work visas work like a lottery. There's a certain number of visas that they issue every year. You just basically enter a lottery and hopefully you can get one. I would say in the STEM field, since like a more advanced and it's considered one of like interesting fields for the government, there's usually a little more people that go and find a work visa if you're in STEM. But for other fields, it's really hard to really get that work visa and especially find a company that will sponsor it.
Yeah, no question. So when it comes to now, you're an engineer, and I worked as an engineer for a while too, and I had to give presentations. It wasn't because I wanted to give presentations. It's because they told me I had to give presentations. I had to do it every month, and I did it because I was a project lead. You want to know how I ended up as a project lead, Luis? I worked at a company that was too cheap to hire project managers, so they put that responsibility on the product development engineers, and I was one of them. And so one of those responsibilities was having to give presentations in front of management every month on project status. And those first few presentations, Luis, let me tell you, those were, I didn't know it was possible to sweat that profusely from one's body, Luis. I mean, and you would have thought that I would have practiced a little more so I wouldn't have to sweat as much, but I was arrogant though. I thought I could just read the slides and get out of there, but it never worked out that way. I always ended up having to stay afterwards because they would ask me questions that I thought I'd answered during the presentation. But because I didn't put it in such a way that the people in the audience, we're talking the CEO, CTO, fill in the blank O, these people in the audience, I didn't put it in such a way that they could understand. Now I got to answer all these damn questions, and I'm wasting my time. I'm wasting their time. It's just a waste of time. And I sat in on some of the other engineers' presentations too, and it was the same thing. It's like Groundhog Day, just watching the same thing over and over again. It wasn't just me. So I definitely saw the benefit of getting better at presenting in front of people. When did you see the benefit of getting better, or if you're already good at it? If that's I guess a different question, but the benefit of presenting effectively in front of others.
I mean, I've never been good at presenting in front of others. I've done a handful of presentations at conferences. Obviously, now that I have like the podcast and everything, I do talk a lot on camera and like talk with people and everything. But I really saw that benefit basically right after school. Like in school, you don't really get exposed too much to public speaking. You may present in front of your class once or twice, but it isn't really like as essential. Once you start working at a company, you start working for someone else, you start realizing that you need to take your design as an engineer and present it to your supervisor in a way that they can understand it, that they can follow it. And obviously they are knowledgeable, they know the concepts and everything, but you were the one taking that design, boiling it down into the basic pieces and presenting it to your supervisor. So I think that's the basic kind of communication that you do as an engineer. Even if you're just out of school first year, you have to do that no matter what. Beyond that, hopefully you get to go to conferences, you get to improve your public speaking skills, talk to a lot of people, networking and etc. You need to practice those skills, and it's super important to vocalize your thoughts and everything in a way that is understandable. As engineers, we like to use a lot of jargon. We like to use a lot of abbreviations. We like to use just very complicated words. But when we're communicating with someone else, when you're trying to present your skills, your designs, you need to use basic concepts, basic words, and be organized in the way you're speaking. Obviously, I'm still kind of early in my career. I'm not like an owner of a company, but ultimately you need to also speak with clients. You need to find business. So I think public speaking, communication, even if you think you're just an engineer that sits on your desk, does a lot of calculations, you need to practice skills if you want to improve your career, if you want to connect with other people, if you want to find new clients, if you want to do basically anything, you need to be able to communicate and really share your knowledge and share what you're working on ultimately.
Yeah, you said something that caught my ear, Luis, about going to conferences to improve your presentation skills. I wish that more people would take that approach. God knows I've been to so many of these conferences, and you sit down to listen to one of these engineering talks. Let me tell you something. You don't need to sit down at any of those talks if you are tired. You need to go in there with a cup of coffee, and you need to be as alert as possible. Because if you're even a little bit drowsy, you will fall asleep. These are some of the most boring presentations you've ever sat through in your life. You know what? Because this is what they end up doing. This is what most of these presenters do. They'll get up there and they will read their slides, and they won't look at you because they're reading their slides. They have to look at the slides. So they don't look at the audience. So you don't even know what they look like, really. Maybe you see the top of their head. And then they're done. And then you probably weren't even paying attention because they were just reading the damn slides. And it's like, I can read the slides just as well as you can. I mean, you could add anything else besides reading the damn slides. But no, they never do. And so now you're just sitting there waiting on the Q&A section. And then not only that, what's even worse is that they go overtime. So you have 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you're given the times. There's an agenda at these conferences. So often people go over the damn time. So now they're going over the time. So now the next presentation starts late. And then that person goes over time, and then the next one goes like, eventually the whole agenda just goes out of whack, and now I'm late for lunch. And now I'm mad because I'm hungry sitting through these damn presentations. It's a cluster. I just remember just being in those type of environments, just being all annoyed about just do better, man. I mean, you have a certain amount of time. Please, you do your presentation within that time. Practice before you go up in front of people. Don't read the slides. Try to engage the audience as best you can. I mean, use these opportunities to get better at presenting. So the next time you do it, you're that much better at it. It just seems like people were just doing the same thing over and over again, and it wasn't working. So I commend you. If you're one of those type of people that go to these conferences and actually is trying to get better at it, thank you. You're helping to keep us awake. At least those are in the audience. So
yeah, and I was going to add something to that. I'm part of the Structural Engineering Institute of ACE, and I go to Structure Congress, which is a conference for structural engineers, basically every year. One of the things that I love about this conference is, yeah, we have all the technical stuff, but they also bring a lot of like well-known presenters and well-known people that know how to give presentations. So when you attend to those presentations, and you see the way they explain everything, how interactive it is, everyone is super engaged. And then you contrast that with like the technical presentations where like you said, people don't know of the slides, they don't know how to guide a communication and make the audience be engaged. It's kind of a black and white situation. So I hope that the people that go to that kind of conferences and attend those presentations that are super interactive and everything can see the difference and hopefully do better next time they have to present.
Yeah, and well, to do that, you have to have some kind of self-awareness or just even care about getting better. I mean, I got better at public speaking because I was tired of having to answer questions I thought I had answered during the presentation. But looking back on it, if I didn't have to do that, who knows how long it would have taken me to get better at public speaking? Because to get better at something, you actually have to put in time and effort to do it.
Yeah.
So if it is something that you want to get better at, I mean, you definitely have to see some sort of benefit in doing so. So hopefully people, you know what needs to happen? People need to, once they look up, when they're reading their slides and when they actually look up, they need to see people sleeping. They need to see people staring into space. They need to see people on their phones going through their Facebook. Then they need to think, oh, you know what? I might just wasted my time putting this presentation together because no one's listening. So maybe this is something I need to get better at. Yeah, I think that's the best approach. So, when it comes to presentations, do you have any kind of process for putting them together? And if so, what is it?
I think for me, the main thing I wanna do when I'm putting a presentation is first get like this story laid out, like write either a script or something that helps me guide what are the points I want to get across in the presentation. And just after I have like the basics, I know, okay, I'm gonna start with this story, this topic, these are my supporting points, this is the conclusion. After that is when I actually start thinking about like, what are the visuals that support that idea? What are the things that I can put in either a PowerPoint presentation if I have the ability, or if I have some note cards, what are some things that I can write that's going to help me either remember what I need to talk next, or help me guide the conversation in a concise and I think orderly manner. So I usually start with like the story, what I'm going to be talking about, and then if I have a presentation, or if I can have like a visual, a computer or something, that's when I kind of start putting those together that support that. One of the things that I try to avoid as much as I can is like putting text in the slide, because if I'm talking, that should be the medium of communication, right? Than people trying to read what I have on the screen and listen at the same time. And so it gets a little confusing. So just put as many images that support my story at the end of the day.
Yeah, you're a smart guy, Luis. I mean, if you're not reading, essentially you want people to engage in public speaking, not public reading. And that's what you're doing. You put a whole bunch of text on the slide and you're just reading. And as I said before, the people in the audience can read just as well as you can. So you need to add something that's maybe not on the slide. So I really like your idea of using images. I think that's brilliant. One thing I was just thinking about, Luis. So you came from Colombia. You lived in the U.S. for I don't know how many years, but it's been a minute, I'm sure. But your first language, I'm guessing, is Spanish, because that's the language of Colombia. But you live in the U.S., where I'm sure most of your presentations are in English. Has that been a challenge at all, having, speaking or giving presentations in a tongue that's not your mother tongue? And if so, how do you get over that?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been challenging. I think one of my least favorite class, my first year in college, was I think it was called speech, where you have to basically stand in front of the class and present something. But as the time has gone on, like I've started to like network with people, just getting more comfortable, just talking in public. Also, the podcast has been what has really skyrocketed the skills of like communicating and basically public speaking, even if it's just like in front of my camera, which I think sometimes even harder to like stand in front of the camera by yourself than on a room full of people. But ultimately, like I feel like at the point where I am right now, it is easier for me to have a presentation done in English than it's be done in Spanish, just because I use English basically 24 hours a day for the past 6-7 years, and Spanish has just become kind of just when I talk to my family or like at home a little bit, but it's just so much harder for me to process my thoughts in Spanish now in a presentation if I don't practice it before than it is to just maybe wing a presentation in English, which sounds strange, but just because I use it so much, especially if it's a technical presentation, I learn pretty much every concept in English first, and then I have slowly tried to understand what is the actual translation in Spanish. So I'll say in English, maybe when I started, it was easier to do in Spanish, but those roles have really turned in the past maybe 3 years.
Okay, well, that's a good thing. And, it's great because English, I don't, it's not something that I think about all that often because English is the only language I know. But for people who have to learn English, I feel really bad for them. English is a really difficult language. And because there's so much nuance to it, there's so many exceptions to things. There's so many sayings that don't exist in other languages, and you might hear it as a non-native speaker and think, what the hell does that mean? Like when someone says, let's like think outside the box, it's like, what do you mean? what box are you talking about? You're thinking an actual box, but no, there's not an actual box, it's a figurative box. But yeah, English is tough, man. So I commend you for now being able to think more, I guess, think more in English really than in Spanish. So to the point where if you actually had to give a presentation in Spanish, that might actually require more work than giving one in English. That's interesting. So another question that I have has to do with nervousness. Do you ever get nervous before giving presentations? And if so, what do you do to deal with your nerves?
All the time. Even when I'm recording a podcast episode and I just meeting someone for the first time, obviously like before our interview today, I kind of start feeling kind of those nervous signs, like I start getting a little hot, my heartbeat starts beating a little faster. But I think with years, I think that's just a sign that what I'm trying to do, like the speech I'm trying to give or the presentation I'm trying to give, is really important to me. If I wasn't nervous, it's like I don't really care about this. Like if it goes well, or if it doesn't, it doesn't. But feeling those like physical things that you're nervous, I think it's almost a good sign for me. Like I know I care about this. I know I put the time to prepare. I know I put the effort to do my best. And I always find that within 2-3 minutes, maybe 5, if it's a really important presentation, those nerves kind of start fading away, and I can start getting a groove, and just kind of my thoughts flow a lot easier. I don't really do anything special, maybe a little breathing exercise before a big presentation, just kind of try to calm myself and like get some oxygen in my body. But I always find that within 3 to 5 minutes, all those nerves kind of start calming down and the presentation just kind of flows as I want it.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, breathing is really important, especially just to calm your nerves, because when you get up in front of the people, you don't want to use any shallow breaths because you might pass out. And no one wants to listen to a passed out person because they can't. You're passed out. So one other question I wanted to ask you was about your podcast, the Engineering Our Future podcast. What's it about, and what do you hope people get from it?
I think the main goal with the podcast is just help students and young professionals succeed in their career. And what does that mean? I don't really teach or talk about technical concepts. I just leave that to university to work. I think that's a place where you need to learn those skills and really practice them. What I'm talking about in the podcast is more public speaking, management, how can you become a leader for students, how to craft a resume, how to find your first job, how to conduct an interview. And I found that those topics, when I graduated from school, I had like no idea what any of those mean. Like these things that I have learned slowly with years, networking with people, talking with other engineers. And the fun thing is with the podcast, I get to bring guests that I probably hadn't really been able to speak if I didn't have the platform to share all this content. So hopefully the students, the young professionals that listen to the podcast are getting a lot of value from it. I brought really interesting guests, CEOs of big companies, of small companies, of nonprofits, just a variety of people to get different perspectives on the industry. What are the things they've done to become successful? What are the things that students and young professionals can do to really stand out in a market that is very competitive right now? There's a lot of jobs, a lot of people that are looking for jobs. So hopefully the content I'm bringing in the podcast is helping them get where they want to be. And on top of that, I mean, the website, there's a lot of resources, a lot of services that I kind of try to complement with the podcast and the topics that I present. And hopefully the whole suite of things that I'm doing is really giving them a lot of value and understanding that even if they feel like they're alone in their challenges, in their struggles, there's a lot of people that have come before them and done a lot of the same things.
Nice. Well, this has been a great conversation, Luis. Thanks for being a guest. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, thanks, Neil. It's been fantastic to be here. I really enjoyed the conversation. People can reach out to me on social media. I'm on LinkedIn at Luis Duque PE, on Twitter and Instagram, same handle, Luis Duque PE. The website, luisfelipeduque.com, that's where everything is. If they want to connect with me, the podcast, the blog, a contact form to reach out to me directly. And I'm always happy to answer any questions and talk with students, young professionals, or anyone that is interested to just network. I think that's the main goal of everything I do.
Excellent. Well, everybody, that marks the end of another edition of Teach the Geek Interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. And you can learn more about it at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thanks, Luis.
Yeah, thank you.